A bone-chilling scream pierces the silence, setting the eerie tone for what is to come. As we delve into the abyss of a sinister crime, brace yourself for the unexpected. A tale so horrifying it's almost unbelievable. A narrative that will leave you questioning the very fabric of humanity. The echoes of the scream serve as a grim reminder, a harbinger of the chilling tale about to unfold. Prepare yourself for a journey through a shocking true crime story. In a quiet town where nothing much happens, a discovery would shatter the peace forever. Nestled amidst the tranquil hills and serene landscapes, the town was known for its stillness, a characteristic that for years had been its charm and its curse. The days passed in a rhythm so predictable that the ticking of the town clock was the only confirmation of time advancing. On a day as unremarkable as any other, a chilling break in the usual calmness would send ripples through the town. It started with an early morning jogger, a local schoolteacher who had taken the same route for 10 long years. But that day, her routine turned into a nightmare. She stumbled upon a sight so horrifying that it would forever be etched in the town's collective memory. The shock spread like wildfire, consuming the quiet little town with a dread that was palpable. It was a scene straight out of a macabre fantasy, a stark contrast to the idyllic life that the residents were accustomed to. The whispers grew louder, the fear more intense, and the town's heartbeat echoed a rhythm of uncertainty and terror. Even the seasoned law enforcement officers, who had seen it all, were taken aback. The town's police force, more used to dealing with lost pets and minor disputes, found themselves in the middle of a nightmarish investigation. The crime scene, as they would later describe it, was a gruesome tableau that left even the most hardened among them shaken. Town, once a haven of tranquility, was now a spectacle of horror. The residents, once content in their peaceful existence, were now prisoners of their own fear. The discovery had changed everything. It had shattered their illusion of safety, it had tainted their paradise, and it had unveiled a darkness they never knew existed. Gruesome find shocked even the seasoned detectives. As the shock subsided, the wheels began to turn. The crime scene, a testament to the unspeakable act of violence, was soon swarming with law enforcement. Detectives, forensics experts, and crime scene investigators, each with a grim determination etched on their faces, descended upon the scene. The task was colossal, but the objective was clear: to piece together the puzzle and bring the perpetrator to justice. In these initial stages of the investigation, every minuscule detail mattered. From the position of the victim's body to the faintest of fingerprints, from the blood spatters to the peculiarities of the room, everything was a potential lead, a possible breadcrumb leading to the criminal. Collecting evidence was a meticulous process, a delicate balance of preserving the integrity of the scene and extracting the maximum amount of information. The forensics team, gloved and gowned, moved with surgical precision, their eyes scanning for anything out of the ordinary. The first leads soon emerged, like a glimmer of light in the darkness. A strand of hair not belonging to the victim. A peculiar footprint. A distinctive scent, the tiniest of anomalies, yet potential game-changers in the pursuit of justice. Simultaneously, detectives were piecing together the victim's last known movements, tracing back their steps, talking to friends, family, and acquaintances. The aim was to sketch a timeline, to understand the victim's world, and identify anyone who might hold a grudge. The list of suspects began to form, each person's alibi scrutinized, their motives. The detectives, seasoned in the art of deduction, knew that the devil was in the details. They harnessed their years of experience, their instinctive understanding of human nature, and their relentless pursuit of the truth to steer the investigation. Every lead was pursued, every theory considered, every stone unturned. As the hours turned into days, the investigation was a whirlwind of activity. The crime scene was a hive of analysts and technicians, while the detectives were out in the field, chasing leads and interviewing suspects. The first suspects came under the scanner. Some were known to the victim, others were strangers, but all were linked by the threads of suspicion. Their alibis were checked and rechecked, their stories dissected, their lives turned inside out in the pursuit of the truth. Every interview was a battle of wits, a high-stakes game where the stakes were justice itself. Despite the daunting task ahead, the team was relentless. The pursuit of justice was not just a job, it was a calling, a mission to right the wrongs, to bring closure to the victim's family, and to ensure that the perpetrator faced the consequences of their actions. Hunt for the criminal was on. Every crime has its twists and turns, and this one was no different. In the labyrinth of clues and conjectures, The investigation took a labyrinthine route, teetering on the edge of the unexpected. The first major twist came when the primary suspect, initially seeming guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt, was found to have an unshakable alibi. He'd been at a crowded public event at the time of the crime, surrounded by hundreds of people. This revelation shook the investigators, sending them back to square one and leaving the case wide open. Next, a turn of events brought an unexpected lead. A seemingly insignificant piece of evidence, a half-torn ticket stub from a local theater, was discovered at the crime scene. It was a beacon of hope amidst the fog of uncertainty. The detectives followed this lead, hoping it would shine a light on the real perpetrator. But, as with all things in this convoluted case, it wasn't that simple. The ticket stub led the investigators to a woman who was initially cooperative, but as the questions grew more pointed, she became evasive. Was she a false suspect, or a clever culprit? The question hung in the air as the detectives dug deeper. Then another twist. A sudden confession from a man claiming to be the killer sent shockwaves through the investigation. But was he the real culprit or just a fame seeker drawn to the spotlight of a high-profile case? His confession was inconsistent, and his motive unclear. This confession, rather than solving the mystery, only added another layer to it. As the investigation twisted and turned, it impacted not just the detectives, but also the community. With each unexpected turn, fear and uncertainty grew. People started to question their safety and the effectiveness of their law enforcement. This ripple effect, this growing unease, was an indirect consequence of the crime and added another dimension to the case. Meanwhile, the detectives continued to grapple with the unexpected leads and false suspects. They pieced together the puzzle, sifting through layers of deception and misdirection. Each twist and turn, each false lead, and each suspect only seemed to deepen the mystery, making it more complex and elusive. Through all these twists and turns, one thing became clear. This was not a straightforward case. It was a puzzle, a maze of misdirection and deceit. The detectives had to look beyond the obvious, question the unquestionable, and delve into the shadows to find the truth. The challenge was daunting, but they were undeterred. They knew that the path to justice was often twisted and turned, but they were determined to follow it to the end. The case was far from straightforward. In the midst of chaos, a breakthrough was just around the corner. A breakthrough. The moment that every detective, every investigator, every person engrossed in the pursuit of justice yearns for. That glimmer of light in the dark, the thread that leads to the unraveling of the mystery. The turning point in our tale is no different. The seasoned detectives, their brows furrowed, their minds teeming with facts, figures, and unanswered questions, were on the cusp of a discovery. A discovery that would serve as a beacon, guiding them closer to the truth, closer to the criminal who had so far remained elusive, hidden in the shadows. The breakthrough came like a bolt out of the blue, like a sudden gust of wind on a still day. It wasn't dramatic or grand, but it was significant. It was a single piece of evidence, a solitary clue that had previously been overlooked, dismissed as inconsequential. But in the grand scheme of things, it was anything but. This was the turning point, the moment when the tide began to turn. The detectives, their spirits buoyed, pounced on this newfound lead with renewed vigor. It was as though a veil had been lifted, revealing a path that had hitherto remained hidden. The detectives, with their sharp minds and sharper instincts, began to connect the dots, to weave together a narrative that was beginning to make sense. The evidence, once disparate and disjointed, was now beginning to form a coherent picture. It was like watching a puzzle come together, each piece slotting in with satisfying precision. The detectives, their eyes alight with the thrill of the chase, could almost taste the impending victory. They were on the right track, they were closing in, they were on the brink of cracking the case wide open. But in the world of crime solving, nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Each breakthrough only leads to more questions, each answer only reveals more mysteries. The detectives knew they were onto something big, something monumental. But they also knew that they were far from done. The journey was far from over, the road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but for the moment, they relished the breakthrough, the victory however small. For they knew that each step, each clue, each piece of the puzzle brought them closer to the truth, closer to justice. The road ahead was long, but they were undeterred, for they knew that they were on the right path. They were on the trail of the criminal. They were one step closer to solving the mystery. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place. With evidence in hand, the law was ready to pounce. The day had finally arrived when the long arm of the law reached out for our suspect. The arrest was made under the gray morning sky, a stark contrast to the dark deeds that had led us here. The suspect, now handcuffed and read their rights, was no longer a shadowy figure hiding in the dark. They were now the face of the atrocities that had sent shockwaves through the community. Charges were filed swiftly. The list was lengthy, each charge more chilling than the last. The suspect, now the defendant, was accused of crimes that would make even the most seasoned criminal cringe. The legal proceedings began, and the courtroom became the stage for a gut-wrenching drama. The prosecution presented a compelling case, each piece of evidence meticulously laid out like a jigsaw puzzle, revealing a picture of guilt. The autopsy reports, the DNA evidence, the damning surveillance footage all pointed to the defendant. Witnesses took the stand, their testimonies echoing through the courtroom, their fear palpable even through their brave fronts. But then, the defense took center stage. They challenged the prosecution's narrative, questioning the integrity of the evidence, the validity of the witnesses' testimonies, and the entire investigation process. They argued for reasonable doubt, painting a picture of a flawed investigation and a rush to judgment. They presented their client not as a monster, but as a victim of circumstance and a flawed system. The courtroom was a battleground, the truth a contested territory. The tension was palpable. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the next twist, the next revelation. The anticipation was a living, breathing entity in the room. The wheels of justice turned slowly, grinding away at the details, the arguments, the evidence. Each day brought new arguments, new pieces of evidence, new questions. The drama unfolded, the trial progressing with the weight of the horrific crimes hanging heavy in the room. And all the while the defendant sat there, a study in contrasts. Were they the villain the prosecution painted them to be, or the victim the defense claimed? The question hung in the air, the answer only known to one person in the room. As the trial drew to a close, the anticipation reached a fever pitch. The jury was left to deliberate, the fate of the defendant hanging in the balance. The final arguments had been made, the evidence presented, and now it was up to 12 ordinary people to decide the extraordinary fate of one. Justice was within reach, and the gavel fell, echoing the voice of justice. The courtroom held its breath as the verdict was read aloud. Guilty. The word hung in the air, heavy with the weight of justice finally served. The defendant, once a respected member of the community, was now forever branded a criminal. The family of the victim, though they would never truly find closure, could perhaps find a sliver of peace in knowing their loved one's killer would pay for their actions. Across the nation, the verdict was met with a collective sigh of relief. The gruesome details of the crime had shocked even the most hardened true crime enthusiasts, leaving an indelible mark on the psyche of the public. And now, at long last, justice had been served. But the verdict was just the beginning. The aftermath of the trial rippled through the community, changing it in ways both big and small. Trust, once given freely, was now a commodity as rare as gold. Doors were locked tighter, neighbors looked upon each other with suspicion, and parents held their children a little closer. Yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was resilience. The community rallied together, vowing to not let this heinous crime define them. Vigils were held, memorials were built, and support groups were formed. The name of the victim was etched into the heart of the community, a poignant reminder of the life that was lost, and the unity that was found in shared grief. The crime also had a profound impact on law enforcement. Policies were reviewed, procedures were revamped, and resources were reallocated. The case served as a stark reminder of the dark corners of society that often go unnoticed until it's too late. It sparked a renewed commitment to vigilance and justice, to ensure that such a crime would never happen again. The trial was over, the verdict was in, but the echoes of the crime still reverberated through the community. The wound was raw, the pain was real, but so was the resolve to heal, to remember, and to move forward. As the dust settled, one thing became clear. The crime had changed the community. It had exposed the worst of humanity, but it had also revealed the best. It had shown the darkness that lurked in the shadows, but it had also illuminated the strength, resilience, and unity that existed in the face of adversity. The echoes of the crime still resonate. In the end, the story was more than just a crime. It was a stark reminder of the darkness that lurks in the corners of our society. A gruesome discovery set the stage for an investigation that twisted and turned, leading to a breakthrough that no one saw coming. The arrest and trial that followed left us with a verdict that, while bringing closure, also left lingering questions. Lessons were learned, yet the echoes of the unanswered continue to haunt us. As we venture back into the silence, the screams of this tale continue to echo, leaving us with a chilling reminder of the true face of crime.